Welcome to That's a Hard No, the podcast about learning to say no and set boundaries to live our best lives. I'm your host, Heather Drago. You may think, because of this podcast, that I'm a boundary setting expert, but I'm not. I'm an expert at struggling to set boundaries. But you know what? I'm working on it, and it is getting easier. Follow along with me as I learn from fellow strugglers and experts so that you too can start saying no without feeling fear, guilt, or FOMO.
You don't know where to go. Unfriendly applications got you feeling low. You're not sure what to do. Weight of expectations is coming down on you. There's a phrase you should know. Tastes so much sweeter than hello. That's a hard no.
What makes a good leader, or better yet, a great leader? I think about this all the time as a business owner. I'm always trying to ensure that I'm communicating with my team of creatives and technical people in a way that inspires them to take ownership of projects, to offer their best work, their best insights, and to work together as a team. I also think about it in terms of parenting, and even though my children are adults now, how can I be a good leader for them as they start to navigate adulthood? So the other thing is, how does this all fit in with boundaries? And what are the kinds of boundaries I should be setting up to be a good leader? So my guest today is the perfect person to talk with about all this, and I'm excited to jump in. Andrea Peck is a certified executive coach, MBTI and emotional intelligence facilitator, trainer, and speaker who supports groups and individuals in becoming conscious, confident, inspiring leaders. So you can see why I'm excited to talk to her. Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Heather. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy you could join us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here today.
Good. So I've been perusing your website and reading some of your blog posts, and you have a great one about boundaries. Let's start with boundaries, and then we'll see where we go from there. And so what kinds of boundaries do successful leaders set or respect?
Well, that's a good question. There's a couple different areas for boundaries. So it could be that physical boundaries, the actual space that you keep between yourself and others.
Mm-hmm.
It could be emotional and mental boundaries, meaning not taking on too much responsibility for other people and not necessarily having them be responsible for you either. Noticing, for example, and this is really important with leaders, are you the type of leader that inspires people or that it feels draining to be around you? So that's more in terms of your impact of your actions and your words and how that affects people. So all of those are important, but again, it depends on the relationship, it depends on the situation, but I think all of those are really important.
And how do successful leaders communicate boundaries in a professional manner?
Well, one of the ways is that through obviously the language that they use. And so for example, when you talk about the actual communication techniques, there's three key words, and they are to be concise, to be consistent, and to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
So those are three things to keep in mind when you're communicating to others. So what do I mean by that? So for example, let's talk about being consistent. People will listen to will notice your actions above your words. So if you say, oh, you can, you're a leader and you want people to feel that they can approach you at any time and my office is always open and it's fine for you to come by, you don't need to make an appointment. If they say it like that, and then anytime anybody does try to reach them, it's never a good time or you're never available, then it's sending an inconsistent message. So people won't trust you. So it's really important. So the key thing is don't set a boundary you can't keep. Or let people know if you are the type of person who likes to have who has a schedule, be happy to meet with you, but just we need to arrange it in advance. That's really helpful. So it's not what your situation is, but it's how you communicate it. Okay. The other thing is in terms of being clear. So there's a lot of ways people aren't clear, and whether it's using vague language. So for example, to say, something's very important, that can mean different things to somebody. But to say, well, it's important, and so therefore I need it by noon, that's really clear about what you're, what you need. The other thing is, I want to add something about being clear as well. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this approach that's called iMessages.
No. Oh, well,
Okay.
yes. Actually, I take that back. I have. My previous co-host, Sarah Saunders, talked about using iMessages. So sorry, Sarah, if you're listening. I do remember.
Well, see, that just shows you're not focused on the I, which is, you care about others, so that's
Yeah.
a good thing. But so the point of it is, this is part of being clear too, is you want people to be able to listen to you. So all these being clear, consistent, and concise helps people to listen to you. But being clear also is, and that's what has to do with iMessages, is that when you communicate, I always say, if you have a complaint, make sure you include a solution with it. So iMessages, instead of saying something like, well, you did this, or you're responsible for this, which they might be, it's harder for people to listen to versus, I'm not really satisfied with something, or I'm really not understanding what's going on, and this is what I need. So that's part of clarity, is to really establish that it is about you and about your needs in some way. Okay, iMessages. So the thing is, even if you don't get it perfectly in terms of the iMessage, even if you say you're unreliable, okay, which is not a great way to communicate something, but even if you did do that, you still, if you could include what you need, like you're unreliable, we need you to be at the meeting 5 minutes early, or at least let us know when you're going to be late. That's really helpful. Then somebody knows what to do. Otherwise, what they're getting with the complaint is they're just going to notice that you're complaining, okay, but they don't know what to do about it.
Hmm. It sounds to me like you're saying, so you can set a boundary when you're talking, but along with that, there needs to be a setting of expectation. Like, what is the expectation?
Well, it could be an expectation. I don't know that I'd say it in that, I'd necessarily use that word expectation just because I have a different connotation of it, but it is, here's what it is about being clear. If you tell somebody you're late, or I'm not satisfied, or this isn't working, then you need to be clear about what it is you need. Okay, what is it? What is the outcome? So that helps, if you're setting a boundary, if you want to set a boundary, you have to let people know what it is that you want, or what it is that you need. Because otherwise, they may be kind of guessing. And so therefore, it may seem like they're either over or underdoing or not responding. Now, once you've expressed yourself clearly and they don't respond, then you can get a little more direct in your approach with that. So that's what it is that a lot of times there's a whole thing, if you look at one of the reasons why people don't, whether it's with others or for themselves, one of the reasons why boundaries don't get respected is things like expectations and assumptions. So we expect people to know things, or we expect people to do things. So, for example, I'm the leader, or I'm the manager, or I'm in charge of things. A lot of times people have expectations of, well, they're in charge, they should know what to do. I don't need to tell them or share this. And actually what you share, or maybe your experience of something that isn't working, might be really helpful for that person, okay? The same is true with assumptions. We make assumptions based on past experiences or on someone's appearance, or so therefore, again, we don't speak up. So a lot of it is speaking up. And it might seem like, well, it should be obvious, but I would be very clearly obvious about it. So that's what it is in terms of, as a leader, don't assume and don't expect. Say what it is really clearly.
I love that, and it also translates to parenthood, being in a relationship, making it clear what you need, not assuming that somebody already knows. And I think it goes both way in terms of business and with leadership. Like, the leader can't just assume people below them understand how things are done. And that's something I'm trying to scale my business right now. Or I shouldn't say try. I'm scaling my business now, and I have new people, and I'm training. And the joke is like they're just trying to pull information out of my brain because I can't just assume they know certain things that I know or certain ways I want things done. So
Well, you bring up a couple good points. So one of them is that in a lot of ways with communication, what we do in our personal lives, obviously we have different goals, different intentions, and we may also use, be more familiar about some things, but there's not a lot of difference in the communication in our personal lives that versus the communication in our professional lives. There really isn't. And then the other thing that you mentioned, which I think is a really, really important point, is that, and it's kind of like, how do you define leadership? And so, there's different types of leaders. So if there's somebody who does it all, nobody can do it all, but if they're an authoritarian leader, for example, then maybe they're not going to want input from others. But the truth is, it's changed over the years. And they have found that very successful leaders are those who they know how to listen, they know how to delegate, there's collaboration. So your success is a result of the atmosphere, the environment that you create that makes it conducive for people to share ideas. And you don't have to be it all. You don't want to.
it's
So,
exhausting to be it all.
right, it's exhausting, and there may be, it kind of gets into the strengths. Some people, let's say you have someone who's a real creative, really thinks outside the box. Maybe they're not the most organized person, but and as a leader, you keep everybody together. You want that person to contribute that strength, that different insight that they have. So it really works well to create an environment where everybody's contributing like their best, and but somebody's in charge still at the same time.
What are some other consistent qualities of good leaders? You touched on that a little bit. Tell us more about what makes a good leader.
The other thing I didn't mention, or I started to mention, is, and there's a couple other things too, but is about, so I mentioned about being consistent, I mentioned about being clear, and also being concise. So I was reading somewhere, I don't know how true this is, but so they say our attention span, it's like for adults, 8.5 seconds or something like that. And I think they've said the goldfish are 9 seconds. So goldfish. So you might want to hire some goldfish, by the way.
Wow.
That's the thought. I don't think they require as many benefits either.
Although turnover, it would be
Yeah,
really frequent.
yeah,
That's not
that's
good.
true. Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. As a marketer, we build websites all the time, and I'm always dealing with user experience. And one of the things I'm constantly telling my clients is when someone hits your homepage, you have 8 seconds to get their attention. And that's just something known in the web development world. Like, there's data behind it. And once you get their attention, if you design your site in a way that captures someone's curiosity or imagination or whatever, then they'll make a decision to dive deeper and read and spend more time reading. But you have to make that initial connection. And there's this guru of web design, and I can't remember the author's name, so please forgive me. I'm sure all the developers listening are screaming. But there's a famous book called Don't Make Me Think. And it's about good website design and UX. And basically, one of the things he talks about in terms of being concise is he says, write the copy for your website, and then edit it down by half, and then edit it down by half again.
Mm.
Because people just, they scan until they see what they need. Then they might read, but people are busy.
Yeah,
But
people
anyway,
are
that's in the
busy.
marketing world. Let's go back to leadership. Sorry, tangent.
Yeah. No. It's an important thing because for all of us, how do you want to communicate and distribute information so that people will pay attention?
Right.
So I think that's really important. And if everything's an emergency, for example, if everything's urgent, people are not going to listen
Hmm.
after a while, or they're not going to pay attention. So about being concise. Oh, here's another thing that's kind of humorous about being concise. And again, I don't know if this is 100% true. So something like uh, between men and women, something like women can communicate like 20,000 words a day, whereas men like 7,000 or something like that. So I guess if you're talking to men, I'm kidding, but get it in early, okay? Because they're going to
That's
be.
funny. Just knowing the difference between my husband and myself. That's so true.
Uh,
Yeah.
so saying no, it can be difficult. And one of the things that makes it a little more, I guess, confusing for others when you say no, or also gives them an opportunity to debate you on it, is if you over explain.
Hmm.
I mean, sometimes you need to so people get the context of something, but other times it's you got to find out like what is the most direct yet respectful way that I can say no without saying, oh, because if you say no to something, oh, I can't really do that because my schedule and then someone said, well, your schedule, you could vary that if you want, and you could, people come up with all kinds of
Or,
suggestions. So that,
I understand you're busy. How about if we schedule it later? Or, yeah, you don't want to give the opening if there really is no debate available to them. You don't want to give an opening. And the other thing I think when they go on and on and on about, why I'm saying no, it's less about explaining and more about trying to cushion the blow because they're uncomfortable saying no.
right,
And
right.
so we tell our listeners, you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and just give the no.
I didn't come up with this. I like this question, and is can you disappoint another to be true to yourself? And the other one is can you trust them to bounce back? So a lot of times, if we look at it, I can mention this in a moment, like what prevents people from
Hmm.
really establishing good boundaries. There's some good explanations for it.
Yeah.
So, and that, and part of, I think, setting good boundaries is having a better understanding of why you don't do it.
Yeah.
But, but I wanted to say another thing in terms of as far as being a leader and how to set good boundaries and also maybe to be respectful of other people's boundaries is that it comes back to something that is, well, it's really in the skills area of setting boundaries, and that is, well, a couple things. We talked about the communication skills a little bit there, but it is about people's intention, like what's their intention, okay? To how do they want things to be in the workplace? What's the goal? And I think you have to have an overall. This is true of so many things. You have to have like some kind of something you're aiming for, okay? Something you're aspiring to be or aspiring to have it. It can change along the way, but if it's just kind of like, oh, everything will work out and everybody will get along, I mean, it might, but if you had the intention that I want to create a workplace where people feel comfortable to express themselves. That's somewhat general, but that sets it in motion. And then you figure out, you break it down more specifically to what that means. So having an intention is really important. And the other thing is that, are you familiar with Brene Brown?
Yes.
Okay.
I love
Well,
her.
she has a good podcast on
Yes.
this too. She has a good, I don't know if it's a quote, but she said that what surprised her the most about boundaries was that she thought that setting good boundaries meant really trying to compromise and appease others and get along. And what she found is that the most boundaried people are the people who are most compassionate. So we can talk about that a little bit more because there's a lot to that.
Yes, we'll come back to that in a minute, but right now we're going to take a quick break. That's a Hard No is brought to you by Clever Girl Marketing, my full-service agency specializing in smart, strategic marketing solutions for businesses and nonprofits. Okay, so you're probably wondering, Heather, what's with the podcast about boundaries? Why not marketing? Well, maybe in the future, but for now, it actually does relate, so bear with me here. Smart marketing, strategic marketing, requires knowing what to say no to and why. Businesses and nonprofits get inundated with marketing options and offers every day. We help you cut through all that noise, focus on your specific needs, and develop actionable strategies that are doable and actually make sense. Whether it's websites, SEO, email, social, or traditional channels, we're experienced in all of it. So if you need help figuring out your marketing, visit our website, clevergrowmarketing.com, and get in touch. We're back with Andrea Peck. So let's keep talking about Brene. We love Brene.
Yeah.
And tell us more about why people who set the most boundaries are the most compassionate. Why is that?
When you are not doing things because you feel obligated or you feel fearful about not doing it or you feel guilty, when you have taken care of yourself, okay, then you can be totally present for others. So when you say I can help you or I'm on doing something, it's because you truly are. So it's different than feeling like, well, yeah, I'm in, but I got this to do, and I got to juggle all this stuff, and I'm not saying it's black and white. Are we going to get everything that we want taken care of before we can contribute? Maybe not. But if we're feeling drained, if we're feeling like we've given too much, if we haven't taken the time we need to chill out, how can we be available to others? So it may feel a little startling to have someone say no, or just I'm not available. However, and when you ask people, like in the workplace, who they feel comfortable with or what they've appreciated, let's say, about a leader or their boss, someone who's direct. Maybe they didn't say always what you wanted, but you knew what they told you was the truth. I can't do this, I can do this, whatever it is. So they trusted them. So it's a big thing. So it's really about, we can't do it all. If we try to, we're going to be exhausted, resentful, less efficient. So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. That all makes sense to me. We touched on a little bit about there are lots of different reasons why people are uncomfortable saying no and why they struggle. We've talked about that a bit, but I would love to get your insights.
They call it faulty thinking. And so that's the assumptions and expectations that we have that are not based on evidence, by the way. They're just things that we think someone should know or do, because of their title, because of past experience, and therefore we may not be speaking up. So that's one of them. The other thing is our environment, all right? Our environment. So it could be the actual workplace. There's some that are a little more laid back and a little more accepting of people's schedules or try to be flexible, and there are others that are not. However, just in general, speaking with the United States, okay, the United States is pretty high in a couple categories, which are not bad. There's a lot of pluses to them, a lot of bonuses. But one of them is, I think we're number 3 out of, I think it was 52 or 53 countries. We're number 3 in terms of, in the world, in terms of being a masculine culture. All right, and masculine not being about male or female, masculine meaning that we value productivity, we value competition, we value getting things done, achieving a lot, and telling people about it, okay? And there's a lot to be said for that. People get things done. However, it does not, it tends to not encourage us to value self-reflection. It encourages us not to value downtime. Like, you don't generally hear somebody say, oh my gosh, I laid around all day and did nothing this weekend, you know? It's like, if you can slip it in, you do it, but it's not, and I'm not saying, it's been changing, but it's not usually high on, it's like, oh, I did my laundry and I cleaned the house and I did this and this, everything, right? And some people even posted on social media how much they did. Okay, the other thing is that we're number one in, yay, we're number one, okay, is that we are individualistic culture. All right.
Yes.
And there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, there's a lot to be said about invention and innovation and all kinds of things, definitely. However, it is that we value the idea that we are self-sufficient. Okay, we can do it all. And that's a myth, by the way. Nobody becomes successful because they did it all. They had either other people that helped them, they had mentors, it was the conditions that were conducive to it. Nobody does it all. So I wanted to read this to you too. I don't know where I found this, but it's about the workplace. Here's the ugly truth regarding our professional lives. Often we value ourselves for our stamina, not our talent. We're silently applauded when we're the last one to leave the office, or if you're the employee who is always available to pitch in and lend a hand, even at your own expense, reinforced to not take good care of ourselves. So that's a heavy pressure to have, and you're really fortunate when you're in a work environment. It can be different in your own work environment, where your boss or the other people recognize, hey, people have lives. And so if we can be flexible to that, flexible schedule, I think going virtual, maybe now hybrid is a little more helpful, I don't know, but that's helpful to a lot of people. They can do that and manage their personal lives and their work lives more efficiently. So that's a big deal.
That's so interesting to me. I'm thinking about even the way I've thought about myself as a business owner, like, I've had to change my mindset, but there were times where I was like, yeah, I'm working 18-hour days. And, I was like really proud of it. Now I'm like, good God, why did I do that? And even as a younger person, when I was in art school, I was in the painting department, which was very, I would call it a masculine department, even though it's 50-50 women, but there was a real sort of bravado about how hard you worked, how late you were in the studio, because you're given a studio and everyone could see each other, and it was very competitive. And then, like, if you weren't there till they closed, then you weren't as dedicated an artist, and you were weak, and you know what I mean. And it was just ingrained really young. And I even think of high school kids now, like, or when my kids were in high school at least, that it's all about achievement. It's all about how many clubs are you in, how many sports are you in, how many awards have you won, what's your GPA, what are all your extracurriculars, and that's what they put on the applications to go to college. It's like, it's all about, you're not valued based on your personal qualities, your skill sets. It's all about what have you achieved, right? So it's ingrained very early.
Right. And it's it really, so here's the irony of that too, because I've done a lot of studies about how we use time, and they find that people actually are most efficient when they work, like, okay, you can do 4 or 5 hours and then you need to take a break. So, and I know with myself, and I have a flexible schedule, so I might start out early in the morning, I'll get a lot of stuff done, then it might work really well, I'll go for a walk. And then while I'm on my walk, I actually I'm not trying to think about things, but I get insights and ideas. So it's actually very beneficial to have, the mix of things. You can be more productive doing that. Get away, get a change, maybe interact with someone, maybe, just change your, mindset, music, conversation. It's a huge thing. So we're approaching it, and I know it's changing, but we've been approaching it wrong. Now, I want to say this too, because it's, again, nothing's 100%. There may be times, and especially when you're starting out, it might be a new position, or you're starting on a new business, or something, a new idea, and you just, first of all, you might just feel very motivated to spend a lot of time and really focus on that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you have to kind of learn to go with your own, you have to start recognizing your own rhythm of things.
I like that. Recognize your own rhythm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about we're number one in terms of being
Individual.
masculine. What else? What are the
So
other
number one,
reasons why we struggle with
individualistic, and
no?
number three, masculine. The other thing is, we're other things too, but those are the only ones I can.
Okay.
There's another one. It's not. We're pretty high up, and it's we're a culture that doesn't. This is an interesting thing. I don't know. This probably would fit into boundaries too, but we tend to not have a high respect for authority. We question authority.
That's
And
interesting.
so the thing is that that's not necessarily a bad thing to question things. It's just that if we don't have any faith or belief in it, can go too far. And so that can make it more difficult depending on the work environment, or the niche that you're in. That could potentially make it more difficult for people to be respectful of others
Mm-hmm.
too. Because we don't have respect. It's like, it's
Yeah.
part of being individualistic, like I can say and do whatever I want and nobody can tell me what to do. And you see that a lot with, I really think that contributed to the chaos, a little bit of chaos and conflict during the pandemic, because we're individualistic and everybody likes
Yeah.
to do their own thing, and also we don't respect authority. Like, what do they know? And
If you think about it, that's sort of when you think of the United States, that's kind of the foundation of our country was we were
mm,
questioning authority and we believed in our individual rights, right? And so that is
mhm,
really ingrained in us as people, as individuals and as a people. Um, yeah, so there's this American exceptionalism, like you can do great
mhm,
things, and that's because, individuals have all this ability and, we question authority. And it's a constant kind of area of conflict that we're always trying to figure out, like what is the right balance, you know? I think personally and as a society.
yeah, what is the right? Yeah, yeah, that's tricky, the right balance. So I even, this isn't, I've thought about this recently because I noticed, and not to get, I don't want to get political or anything, but just in terms of, some of the leadership in politics, in the political environment, it's just, first of all, again, how people are communicating at all levels to them, and how they're communicating is really creating, as far as boundaries, I don't think environments work. I don't think groups work well if there isn't a sense of respect, okay, towards one another. There's it's one of the, I don't know what you call it, it's not a law of communication, but um, there's a gentleman by the name of, um, I can't think of his name, but he started this idea of nonviolent communication. He's a psychologist, and actually, he was in Cleveland like some years ago, and I went to a workshop that he put on. But he was one who came. I don't know that he came up with the iMessages idea, but again, it was about communicating so people want to listen. It doesn't mean not expressing who you are. But one of the tenets, I guess, of communication is that people are more likely to respect you or to honor what you have to say if they feel that you respect their needs. They're more likely to respect your needs if they feel that their needs are just as important. So when you talk about leadership, that's a really key thing. And I think that there's some people who are really respected as leaders because the people who work for them or the people who collaborate with them know that they get down and dirty if they need to too. Like they get in
Mm-hmm.
the ditch and help out, with doing stuff. So if someone else is, if you're a leader and what you're treated differently than how the people that work in the organization get treated, there's a resentment that comes up
Right.
as a result of that. So that's a key thing in any type of relationship. If you want something from somebody, they need to feel that their needs are as important as yours are.
Yeah, I was going to ask, and this sort of is related, I think, is that I try to lead my team with empathy. Um, and sometimes I have to, being the people pleaser that I am, I have to kind of pull back and not be too empathetic. Like, you know, you are working for me and I need you to do these things. And so like there's such a thing as being too empathetic. But I do try to respect my team members as people. And I think that a lot of the ills in society, a lot of the harsh words and rhetoric, I think you're right. I think it comes from people feeling not seen, not heard, not respected. And it would be really nice if our society could figure out how to get back to that.
Well, and also there's this idea now that like there's permission
Yeah.
to say whatever you think. Eh, and also it goes both ways, because then there's an extreme about everyone having a hypersensitivity to language too. So we've got like both extremes going on. So the name of the person, just to say it, is Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. He's since passed away, but he worked with some, speaking of what's going on, he worked with groups like the Palestinians and the Israelis. He worked with police in the inner cities. He worked with a lot of different groups to help them resolve conflict, to help them resolve differences, so they could listen to one another. That was his, I guess, his intention.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, I think that's a key thing. You know, people are not going to respect what you need when you're communicating unless they feel that their needs are being respected.
one thing too, by the way, in terms of boundaries, I think we all know this is technology. Okay, is really something that impacts our ability to keep good boundaries. And that again is an intention, a decision that somebody has to make. I'm not going to go, I'm turning off my phone, or I'm not going to get on my computer, or what, and maybe letting people know.
I had someone recently say to me, you know, your phone is always your messages are always silenced. Whenever I text you, it says your messages are being silenced. I'm like, yes. I put my phone on do not disturb because I'm not constantly checking and responding to messages. And they were annoyed. And I was like, well, I'm sorry. That's just, I cannot function if I'm constantly being interrupted. And so that is a choice I've made, and I don't know how they feel about it. I kind of don't, like you were saying, are you willing to disappoint someone? Yes. When it comes to that, I am. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing too. If you think about our culture, and I don't have the statistics on it, but you're talking about we want instant gratification. We want instant response. We're impatient. And so if we say something or communicate with someone, we want to hear from them right away. And especially because of technology, we assume, well, I'm sure they have their phone right by them. They should see that.
Yeah. Well, there's actual chemicals that happen when we're on social media, when we're responding to people, when we make comments and someone responds, we get these little dopamine hits, right? And that is addictive. And so we end up developing this behavior because we're addicted to these little dopamine hits. And then we get mad when we can't get the hit. That's not my problem.
Well, we have to find some other ways to
Right.
get
Yeah.
dopamine hit.
Hug a dog. There you go.
Yeah,
Right.
really. Or help a stranger.
Let's talk about leaders accepting boundaries. A lot of I think our first episode of this season, we talked about how some people have resorted to what they call quiet quitting, where they're uncomfortable saying no, but they're just like kind of shutting down and just putting in the bare minimum. And we talked about, whether that was a healthy way to go about it or not. And I think part of it is because some people may feel that their workplaces, their bosses, don't respect their boundaries. So how can good leaders, receive and validate boundaries?
When someone is accepts work, accepts a job, or they're working in a certain environment, it probably goes without saying that there may be times when one has to be, you know, again, excuse me, it depends on the work, but perhaps beyond the assigned hours that you planned on, and that just is part of the position. So to me, it would be important that that was clearly communicated to somebody. In terms of, how does a leader deal with that, dealing with other people setting boundaries? Well, again, I think it's, I don't know if it's just they're setting the boundary and the leader's like, okay, just accepting it. I believe it's a process of maybe understanding what's involved and what's, why not disagreeing with somebody, but I would want to find out why they feel that way, what might make them it different for them, how could it work better for them, because if you're
What's
all
going on in their lives, right?
right,
Yeah,
because if
how
you're
can
all
I,
yeah,
yeah,
because if you're all working together, like if we're in this organization and they're a vital part, you're a vital part, then it's kind of looking at the different pieces of it and finding out what's going on. And so maybe for someone like that, it's there could, flexible schedule on certain times, or I don't know. There's, to me, the I understand, and I don't know all about, the quiet quitting. It's a statement that people are making about that we have a limit about how much we're willing to do. And so that's, everybody should have a limit. There's no question about it. The thing is that it seems a little bit, I don't know if this is the right word, because it seems a little bit passive, or maybe even passive aggressive, where let's talk about this because it isn't working. So maybe the demands are too much. Maybe it's unreasonable and other people haven't spoken up and it's about time that somebody did. But in terms of the quiet quitting, what I've thought about that is that certainly creates a problem for the leader in the workplace. But I also was thinking that that is a reason for why some people are going to be more interested in artificial intelligence, because I guess we can't count on our workforce. We're going to have to find ways to replace people. So I think having a conversation, maybe the work hours, maybe they're outdated. Maybe there's so many other ways to be efficient and nobody brought it up. And so this is a perfect opportunity. So just to stop working, I think that's one way to deal with it, but it won't necessarily create, it doesn't give the other party an opportunity to look at what else could be done.
agreed, 100%. I do think it's passive aggressive, and I think someone can't change the situation unless it's communicated to them that there's a problem.
And if you were working somewhere and you were able to bring that up and the person in charge, said, I'm sorry, this is what we do and we're not changing, then the person working would have to say, do I want to work in this environment?
Right.
It would be their choice to do that, and maybe there's something better. And people are doing that all the time.
So speaking of people who are not in the leadership position necessarily, they don't have the job title that indicates that they're a leader. Presumably, they're interested in working their way up and becoming a leader at some point, becoming a manager, getting promoted in some way, or having their own company or something like that. How can younger people in the workforce build leadership skills or demonstrate leadership qualities so that they can be recognized and are more likely to, take it up or go up the ladder, I guess is the phrase.
So the thing is, again, it kind of starts with setting an intention. Setting intention, a goal of what you want to do. So that's really important. And one of the things I say is, especially whether it's communication or whether it's leadership skills, notice the people you admire. Notice the people who do a good job. So whether it's actually the person with the title, or it's just somebody you notice, wow, they handle situations well, or they seem very confident, and observe them, talk to them, find out about what was their path to get somewhere. And again, just noticing what they do, because I think we all can be role models for one another, and we can learn from one another. So that is part of it. Certainly if somebody's interested in moving up, I would talk to somebody who is in a higher position, or who knows about how people move up, and find out what are there certain steps, are there certain skills that I need to learn, are there certain experiences that I should be getting, as opposed to, and again, it's about communicating it versus just trying to, maybe assume what it takes, and find out, is there a possibility here? And in some cases, for example, they may say, well, you can only move up so far, and maybe that's enough for a while, and then you're going to move on. But it's important, and I think if you let others know that you're interested, they will kind of notice you too more, and be on the lookout for that. The other thing is that, and this is true with anything, and I'm not saying I'm an expert at this. This is always like a work in progress. But to do anything, to move up, to change what's been going on, is you have to be willing to do it. A willingness to change, an openness to things, to learning. So as much as you might know about things, to recognize, wow, I'd like to learn as much as I can, and not necessarily worry about, what's it going to get me? What's my outcome? It's just to really, honestly have as I said, a willingness, but also a passion for that, for the learning and practicing. Like, you get better at things because we practice. So getting the experience is all part of it. What do they say? I think it's Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
So he said 10,000 hours. But what I've read some people who have not necessarily disagreed, but have a little dispute with the way that was stated, and what they added to it, which I think is a good point. It's hours of trial and error practice. So learning from mistakes. All right. Talking to, if like I said before, talk to somebody who might be able to give you guidance about how to move up. But also, if you make a mistake, or if something isn't working, be willing to get feedback. To learn from others, get their input, their opinion, someone who you trust. That, I think, is really, really helpful. So it gives you a guideline. So again, you're not doing it alone. No one does it alone. Okay, they didn't get to the top just because they wanted to. There were other people who helped them. There were experiences that they had. There were interactions. It was a process. And so it also builds community. Like if you talk to someone and you want their input, how much more flattering is that than when somebody asks you for advice, right? And guidance.
Oh, that is so true. That is so true. In my career, when I've asked people for advice, or in various realms, that people are so kind of eager to share their knowledge, because they in some ways they're flattered that, oh, you're recognizing that I have achieved a certain level of success in this area. And also, I think people generally do like helping others who are kind of on the path they were on.
Yeah, I think they definitely do. And it gives someone an opportunity to talk about themselves.
True. That's a good point. Everyone loves to talk about themselves.
That's true. And the good things they've done,
Yeah. So speaking of which, we got to wrap this up, even though I feel like we could have 2 more hours of this. But where can our listeners find you and learn more about you?
So they can find out more about me. I have a website, which is andreapeck.com. So that's a way that they can, find out, read about me. And I do need to update it a little bit. But anyway, to read about me.
Oh, I
and
know a
find out.
great web development company.
You do? Okay, perfect. We'll talk.
Anyway,
So,
sorry.
yeah, no, that's okay. That's
Shameless.
helpful. So they can contact me. They also, actually my email, Andrea Peck at andreapeck.com. How much easier can you get than that? So I love it. Or you can call me or text me, and all that information is my website. But what I get is, just if you have a question or if you anything related in your workplace or whatever, just throw out an idea. It doesn't have to be something that, oh my gosh, okay, this is a project I have to get involved with. But I'm happy to share any ideas that I have. I'm happy to share if I can refer you to someone. I really love communication, so to be able to talk about it is just joy. So that would, anyone who's has anything on their mind about that, feel free to get in touch.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew. You're so generous. Thank you so much for your time today. I feel like we could have many more conversations about, work and careers and leadership. I love the topic of leadership, so I really appreciate this conversation. And I'm so glad we could spend some time together today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to see you again, and also to be able to have a nice and more involved talk about this. Thanks. I appreciate it a lot.